Masons. They're on their trip, and we wish them well, and we'll look forward to seeing them back next week. Our lesson for tonight continues our series on Esther. And I've started out, for those of you that may have missed the first one, I'm doing something new with this. I've never actually surveyed a book by different people that are in the book, but that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So tonight's lesson is on the story of King Ahasuerus, and I've entitled it, If It Pleases the King. And we'll see that that is mentioned several times in the book of Esther alone. But as we look at King Ahasuerus, we see that he is believed to be the same as Xerxes I. There is some speculation to that, but most believe that he is the same as Xerxes I. He is the son of Darius the Great. He ruled from 486 to 465 BC. And as we see in Esther chapter 1, beginning with verse 1, his reign was from India to Ethiopia, over 127 provinces. Though he is portrayed as a king of great power and rule, one of the things that we find out about King Ahasuerus is that his fortune did not last. According to history, he was assassinated in 465 BC, having lost much of his empire by that time. So even though he began with great power, and when we look at the book of Esther, we believe this to be in the first few years of his reign, we see that that power did not last in its entirety. He is known mostly for what is found in Esther, though he's also mentioned in Ezra chapter 4 and verse 6. As we look at King Ahasuerus, we see that he was a king with a temper and a very fickle nature. We see that he was a king whose decisions were based on the advice of others and his pleasure in them. He was the one who fired his queen, if you will. He was the one who was pleased, so to speak, with the elimination of the Jewish race, and later was convinced to do otherwise to save them. He was a king who went with the flow on many occasions. We see that he was the type to do whatever anybody else wanted him to do. And we see how that was a detriment to his reign. The lesson that we have for tonight, if it pleases the king, will highlight his characteristics based on the events of the book of Esther. We'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think, of King Ahasuerus. I want to begin by looking at the king's irresponsibility. There are different occasions in which we can survey his irresponsibility. Let's begin reading in Esther chapter 1. If you have your Bibles, I'd open them up. I'd appreciate you following along with us. We'll read several verses from the book of Esther. But we'll begin at Esther chapter 1. We'll look at verses 10 through 12. Esther 1, verse 10. On the 7th day of the royal feast, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, Harpath, 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. We looked at the story of Queen Vashti a couple of weeks ago, our other lesson, but tonight's focus is on King Ahasuerus, the same events through his eyes. As we look at King Ahasuerus in regards to this feast, one of the things that we find is that the king was well drunk. It says here that he was merry with wine in verse 10. I want to read a few words from Proverbs chapter 31. These are the words to King Lemuel, and we believe to be King Solomon. And these are the words that his mother spoke to him in regards to him being king. Proverbs 31, beginning with verse 1. The words of King Lemuel, the utterance which his mother taught him. What, my son? And what, son of my womb? What, son of my vow? Do not give your strength to women, nor your ways to that which destroys kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink, lest they drink and forget the law, and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to those who are bitter of heart. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. Open your mouth for the speechless, in the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. As we look at Proverbs 31, the advice of King Lemuel's mother was that he, as a king, avoid strong drink. See, a king has a responsibility to the law and to his people. It's very difficult for a king to judge righteously and in justice if he is not sober. And so we find the case of King Ahasuerus. He was very irresponsible in just the fact that he was drunk. It was very difficult for him to deal with matters as a king in that state. We also see that the king's anger toward Vashti burned within him. And this influenced his reign, this influenced his decision based on how he dealt with Vashti. He allowed his anger as well as others' advice to rule his decisions regarding what she had done. Look at verses 16 through 22 of Esther chapter 1. Beginning with verse 16. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Queen Vashti is not only wronged the king, but also all the princes, and all the people who are in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so that they will despise their husbands in their eyes. When they report, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come. Verse 18, this very day the noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to all the king's officials that they have heard of the behavior of the queen. Thus there will be excessive contempt and wrath. If it pleases the king, let a royal decree go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it will not be altered, that Vashti shall come no more before King Ahasuerus, and that the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. When the king's decree, which he will make, is proclaimed throughout all his empire, for it is great, all wives will honor their husbands, both great and small. And the reply pleased the king and the princes. And the king did according to the word of Memucan. Then he sent letters to all the king's provinces, to each province in its own script, and to every people in their own language, that each man should be master in his own house, and speak in the language of his own people. So again, when we look at Ahasuerus and what he did here, he listened to the advice of those who were around him. Divorce Vashti, get rid of her, put her away from the queenship, get someone else. Get someone that'll listen to you. If this ever gets out, if people tell this story and she's so clean, it's going to be a bad example. And he listened. He listened to what they had to say. And in his drunken state, he went with what they said. We see that his trust was misplaced. And in the advice of the men at the banquet, we see that his trust was misplaced in them. And later we see that his trust is misplaced again, this time in a man by the name of Haman. Look at Esther chapter 3, the first couple of verses. Esther chapter 3, verse 1. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. We see that Haman plotted against the Jews, the people of Mordecai. Look at verses 5 and 6. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. The king took Haman, he promoted him. He set him above all the princes who were with him. And he put his trust in him. And Haman, we find, because of jealousy maybe, because of Mordecai, because he wouldn't bow down to him, he sought to have him, not only him, but all the people of Mordecai killed. We see that the king trusted him enough to give him his signet ring, which he used to carry out his plot to annihilate the Jewish people. And because the king had given him his ring, he had the king's permission to do all of these things. Later we see when Mordecai discovered the plan, he mourned, getting the attention of Esther. Esther later informed the king of the decree that he had made because he gave Haman his signet ring. And we see that he acted accordingly. But all of this transpired because the king put his trust in a man such as Haman. We also notice that many of these things that were done were based on what pleased the king. There are 7 examples of someone either asking, if it pleases the king, let this be done. There are 4 of those. Or similar. It pleased the king, and so he did this. There are 3 examples of those. But many of these things we find happen because it pleased the king, or was asked if it pleases the king. But I also want us to notice the king's change of heart. See, he made some bad decisions. He was an irresponsible king. But he also made some good decisions when he realized the wrongs that had been committed. Let's go back to Esther chapter 2 and verse 1. Esther chapter 2, verse 1. This immediately follows what we read of what happened with Vashti and how the queenship was taken from her. And in verse 1 of Esther chapter 2, it says, after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus subsided, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what had been decreed against her. After everything that happened with Vashti, it says that he remembered her. And I wonder how he remembered her. We're not exactly told exactly what this means. Did he have regret as to everything that had transpired against her? It's very possible. And even so, there's no way to reverse it. Once the king's decree had been put in place, it couldn't be reversed. There's no way to go in and say, well, let's just cancel this out. A whole new law would have to be enacted to reverse anything like that. And I wonder if he had regret as to how she'd been treated. And once he had become sober, once he had really understood what had happened, but we are told that he remembered her. We also read that at the second banquet to which King Ahasuerus and Haman were invited, the king was told of the plot of Haman to annihilate the Jewish people. Esther chapter 7, I'm looking at verses 1 through 10. Esther 7, verse 1. So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine. The king again said to Esther, "What is your petition?" Queen Esther, "It shall be granted to you." "And what is your request?" "Up to half the kingdom. It shall be done." Then Queen Esther answered and said, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. Had we been sold as male and female slaves, I would have held my tongue, although the enemy could never compensate for the king's law." So King Ahasuerus answered and said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing?" And Esther said, "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman." So Haman was terrified before the king and queen. Verse 7. Then the king arose in his wrath from a banquet of wine and went into the palace garden. And Haman stood before Queen Esther, pleading for his life, for he saw that evil was determined against him by the king. When the king returned from the palace garden to the place of the banquet of wine, Haman had fallen across the couch where Esther was. Then the king said, "Will he also assault the queen while I am in the house?" As the word left the king's mouth, it covered Haman's face. Harbona, one of the eunuchs, said to the king, "Look, the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on the king's behalf, is standing at the house of Haman." The king said, "Hang him on it." Verse 10, so they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath subsided. Upon realizing Haman's wrong, and really realizing his own wrong and putting his trust in Haman in the first place, King Ahasuerus had him executed for his crimes, for his plot against the Jewish people. He tried to correct the wrong that had been done. And when he realized what had been devised against the Jews, he sought to change it as well. Esther chapter 8, beginning with verse 3. Now Esther spoke again to the king, fell down at his feet, and implored him with tears to counteract the evil of Haman the Agagite. In the scheme which he had devised against the Jews. And the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, "If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seems right to the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to annihilate the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that will come to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my countrymen? Verse 7, and King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, Indeed, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he tried to lay his hand on the Jews. You yourselves write a decree concerning the Jews, as you please. In the king's name, seal it with the king's signet ring. Whatever is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring, no one can revoke. So the king's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes of the provinces from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all, every province in its own script, to every people in their own language, to the Jews in their own script and language. And he wrote in the name of King Ahasuerus, sealed it with the king's signet ring, and sent letters by couriers on horseback, riding on royal horses bred from swift steeds. Verse 11, by these letters, the king permitted the Jews who were in every city to gather together and protect their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the forces of any people or province that would assault them, both little children and women, and to plunder their possessions. On one day, all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. So realizing the wrong, he gave permission to Mordecai and to Esther to write a new law. To write a law that would allow them to defend themselves against any people that would stand against them and try to kill them. They were able to defend themselves. They were able to plunder their possessions on that one day. It had been decreed in the first place to destroy the Jews. The law couldn't be reversed, but it did allow Esther and Mordecai to write a new law that would counteract the one made by Haman. And we have to notice too that he didn't write the law himself. He gave them permission, but he could have done more than what he did. But he did give them permission to defend themselves. We also see in chapter 8 that Mordecai was promoted and honored. Esther 8, verse 15. So Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a great crown of gold, and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The king did seek to try to make amends for the wrongs that had been done under his power. And maybe on occasions he could have done more, as I mentioned before, but we do see that he did try to correct some of those wrongs in his life. There's other occasions that we read of King Ahasuerus and Esther that really didn't fit with the lesson. We'll think of him being sleepless one night. And he remembered that there was someone who had warned of an offense against the king, Mordecai. He sought to honor him in that occasion. We see the occasion of Queen Esther coming before him, and we'll probably look at some of these in other cases as well. The occasion where she came before him, he held out his scepter to her. King Ahasuerus was not all bad, but he did have some bad tendencies that led to irresponsibility, as we saw earlier. But what do we learn from King Ahasuerus? Overall, in looking at his story, what do we learn from him? First of all, power does not equal responsibility. Just because someone has great power over a great many possessions, or a great many lands does not make them a responsible person. And again, as we look at the reign of King Ahasuerus, we see that in the beginning he's the ruler of a great many nations. 127 provinces. A great deal of people were under his control. But by the time the end of his reign came along, at least according to history, most of it had been squandered away. Most of it had been lost. It's very easy for us to believe that King Ahasuerus was given these things and he didn't care for them in the right way. See, we should always be careful how we handle ourselves in regard to our responsibilities. When we look at our own lives, we see many things that we are responsible for. We are responsible for ourselves. If we're married, we're responsible for our spouse and our children. We have responsibilities within the church. And we need to take great heed to those responsibilities and handle them well, especially those that regard our service to God. I want to look briefly at the parable of the talents that we find in Matthew chapter 25, verses 24 through 30. We see that there was a servant that was responsible for 5 talents, one that was responsible for 2 talents, one that was responsible for 1. 2 of them handled themselves well in that situation, and their talents were doubled before their master returned to take back what was rightfully his. But of the last, this is what is said in verse 24 of Matthew 25. Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours. But his Lord answered and said to him, You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to him who has the talents. Verse 29, For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I think in verse 29, and I think we read something here that we can apply to King Ahasuerus. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. See, King Ahasuerus was not responsible for the power that he had. And maybe that's the reason that he lost what he had. But we see that we need to be very careful of our responsibilities and care for them well, especially in regard to God and his kingdom. On several occasions, the king realized his mistakes and sought to correct them. I think of Haman's promotion. He had trusted Haman, and when he found out what Haman had devised against the Jews, what he had come up with, decided to do, and even put into law, he was killed. He took care of the wrong that had been done in putting his trust in Haman. In the proposed annihilation of the Jewish people, he allowed Esther and Mordecai to write a new law to counteract the old one. There were occasions where King Ahasuerus realized that he was wrong. And when he did, he tried to do his best to what he thought was his best, I guess, to make it right. And you know, we too, we may realize that we are wrong. Many occasions, we realize that we fall short against other people, against our God. Do we seek to make them right? When you do something wrong against someone, do you seek forgiveness from them? Do you seek to keep that friendship that you might have with them? Do you do everything in your power? And I know that there are times when those things are maybe beyond repair. Do we do everything in our power to make them right? And when it comes to our relationship with God, you ever realize that you've wronged Him? Do you seek to make it right? I think we all realize we're not perfect individuals. But when we do realize that we have sinned against God, we ask for forgiveness. And sometimes it's something that is too difficult for us to deal with on our own. And if that's the case, do you need help in making it right? If you have failed God, if you need to ask for forgiveness from the congregation, from the church for something that you've done to shame her or shame our God, if you've done something that you're not proud of, maybe you simply realize that you need help, that you need prayer. Maybe you need to return to God. Maybe you need to become a Christian. Maybe you need to be obedient to the word we've been given. Hearing, believing, repenting of sin, changing your life. Confessing that Christ is the Son of God. May you believe this to be so. Being baptized for the remission of your sin. But if you have any need whatsoever, if you need to make your life right with God, the invitation always stands open. But if you need to respond now, if there's something we can help you with, we ask you to come as we stand and sing.
As an affection's been nailed to the cross, is our heart.